My stepmother with 3 kids demands I raise them, but when I refused to be her free nanny, my father sided with her and told me to leave at 18. So I started living as a tenant in my own house. I'm 16 years old. I work part-time at a convenience store on weekends, and I'm basically living like a tenant in my own father's house, which sounds ridiculous, but it's exactly what's happening. The thing is, it all started like 4 years ago when my mom got sick with cancer and I had to start doing things for myself because, well, someone had to do it, and my dad was never the type to get very involved in those domestic things. I was 12 when I started making my own lunches for school because my mom was too weak, and my dad literally left for work at 6 in the morning and got home at 7 at night, so there was nobody else who could do it. At first it was weird, like, my sandwiches were a total mess, and more than once I forgot to pack important things like utensils or napkins, but eventually I got the hang of it and even got pretty good at it. My mom died when I was almost 13, and honestly, I don't remember much from that period because I think my brain basically blocked everything out. But what I do remember is that after her death, I kept making my lunches because nobody else was going to make them, and honestly, I had already gotten used to that routine. My dad was alone for like a year and a half after mom died, and I thought things were going to stay that way, that it was going to be just the two of us managing the house in some weird and dysfunctional way, but it worked. But then he met Victoria somewhere, I think at work or on some dating app. He never really told me the whole story. Victoria has 3 kids from a previous marriage, twin boys who are like 6 now, and an 1-year-old daughter. And when my dad told me they were getting married, I was like, okay, I guess that's fine, because honestly I didn't care that much at the time. I thought we were going to be like 2 families living in the same house but each doing our own thing. Spoiler alert, I was completely wrong. The first few months after they got married and everyone moved into our house, things were relatively quiet. I mean, there were more people and more noise, and the twins were super loud all the time. But Victoria wasn't asking me for anything in particular, and I continued with my usual routine, doing my things, going to school, working on weekends, making my food. But like a year after they got married, Victoria started with her comments. One day I was in the kitchen making my lunch for the next day. I think it was a Sunday night, and she came in and said, "Hey, since you're making your lunch, could you also make the kids' lunches?" And I was like, what? Because it had literally never been my responsibility to make lunches for her kids. I told her no, that I made my lunch because nobody else made it for me, and that she was their mom, so she should make their lunches. She went quiet, but I saw it bothered her. She made that face she makes when she's angry but doesn't want to say it directly. After that, she started complaining to my dad. I heard them talking in their room at night, and she said things like, I was selfish, and that I didn't help with anything in the house, which was a total lie because I washed my clothes, cleaned my room, made my food. I was basically self-sufficient. My dad came to talk to me one day and said, "Look, I know Victoria asked you to make the kids' lunches, and it would be good if you helped out a little more with the family." I told him I already did enough and that those kids weren't my responsibility, that Victoria was their mom, and if she wanted them to have lunches, then she should make them. My dad got uncomfortable. You know how he is. He hates conflict, so he just said something like, "Well, think about it," and left. Typical of him. Avoiding any real confrontation. Victoria got more insistent after that. She started using super manipulative tactics, like, she would make her kids ask me directly if I could make them lunch, and the twins would look at me with those big eyes and say, "Please, will you make us a sandwich?" And I felt bad, but I also knew Victoria was using them to make me feel guilty. I told them no, that their mom would make their lunches, and they would leave confused. The 1-year-old daughter, who's named Sophie or something, was more direct and would say things to me like, "Mom says you're selfish because you don't help us." Victoria also started getting super passive-aggressive. She would leave comments when I was eating my lunch at school and her kids were eating whatever thing she had packed for them, and she'd say things like, "Oh, look what a nice lunch you have. Too bad you don't have time to help others." But things got worse, because Victoria didn't just settle for the lunch thing. She started leaving the kitchen a literal mess when she cooked for her kids, and then would ask me if I could clean up a bit since I used the kitchen anyway. I told her I cleaned what I messed up, but that I wasn't going to clean her mess. Then she started with asking if I could watch the twins in the afternoons when she had to go out, or if I could help the daughter with her homework because she was busy. It kept being more and more things, and I kept saying no, because seriously, those kids aren't my responsibility. I didn't ask for them to come live here, and it's not my job to raise them. The big confrontation happened on a Tuesday after school. I got home, and Victoria was in the kitchen with all three kids, and she said, "I need you to understand something. This is a family now, and in families, everyone helps each other. So I need you to start contributing more with the kids." I literally exploded. I told her I wasn't part of her family equation, that her kids were her responsibility, and my dad's if he decided to marry her, but that I had no obligation to take care of them, or cook for them, or do anything for them. I told her I had already been doing everything for myself since I was 12, and that she should do the same for her own kids. She got furious, started yelling at me that there was an ungrateful and selfish teenager, and I yelled back that it wasn't my fault. She had 3 kids to take care of and needed help. That wasn't my problem. The kids were there watching everything, and honestly, I felt bad for them, but I was also so angry that I didn't care that much at the time. My dad got home later that day and called me to his room to talk. He told me Victoria was very upset and that I had been very rude to her. I explained the whole situation to him, told him Victoria had been pressuring me for months to take care of her kids and that I wasn't going to do it because it wasn't my job. I reminded him that I had been taking care of myself since Mom got sick and that nobody had helped me. So why did I have to help these kids who were basically strangers to me? My dad was quiet for a while and then said he understood my point, but that Victoria was his wife now and we needed to find a way to live together as a family. I told him I was living together just fine, that I didn't cause problems, that I took care of myself, and that the only problem was that Victoria wanted me to be like a responsible older brother or something when I had never signed up for that. The conversation didn't go anywhere. My dad basically told me to try to be more understanding, and I went to my room, and frustrated. After that, Victoria extended her campaign to dinners too. One Friday I got home from school and she was cooking and she said, "Today, you're going to cook for everyone. I'm tired, and I need you to start doing your part." I told her no, that I cooked my own food, but I wasn't going to cook for 6 people. She got super angry and told me that then I could cook my own dinner, but not to use any of the family's ingredients. I was like, "That's fine, perfect," and left. That night I cooked pasta just for myself, with ingredients I had bought myself at the store where I work. You have an employee discount, so I take advantage, and ate it in my room. Victoria told my dad I was being impossible, and my dad came again to talk to me. But this time, I told him that if Victoria didn't want me to use the family's food, then I was going to buy my own food, and that's exactly what I did. The next weekend I went to the supermarket with my money from work and bought my own groceries. Basic things like pasta, rice, chicken, vegetables, bread, what I needed. I put everything in a separate section of the fridge and pantry with a note that had my name. Victoria saw this and told my dad I was being ridiculous and divisive. My dad and her had like an intervention with me. Like, they sat me down in the living room on a Sunday and told me this couldn't continue like this, that I needed to start contributing more to the family and stop acting like I lived alone. I told them I was perfectly fine, living like I lived alone, that I wasn't causing them any problems, and that if they wanted me to be part of their family, then they needed to stop treating me like a free babysitter and cook. Victoria said she wasn't treating me like that she just wanted me to be part of the family and that families help each other. I told her that helping each other is one thing, but what she was asking me to do was basically raise her kids for her. Victoria then changed tactics and threatened me. She told me that if I wasn't going to help with the kids, then I couldn't eat the family's food. I told her perfect, that I was already buying my own food anyway. She got even angrier, because I think she expected me to give in with that threat. My dad looked super uncomfortable during this whole conversation. He practically didn't say anything, just nodded when Victoria talked. I asked him directly, "Dad, do you really think I should be taking care of Victoria's kids and cooking for them?" And he paused for a long time and then said something super weak like, "It would be good if you could help more." But that hurt me, honestly, because I felt like he was choosing Victoria and her kids over me. But I also wasn't that surprised because he's always been like that, avoiding conflicts and taking the easy way out. Things got super tense after that. I continued with my routine, bought my food, cooked only for myself, went to my room. Victoria gave me death stares every time she saw me and made passive-aggressive comments all the time. The kids stopped talking to me much. I think Victoria told them something, because before, at least the twins were friendly, but now they avoided me. My dad basically ignored me. I guess because he didn't know what to do with the situation. The conflict exploded again on a Wednesday night. I got home from work around 8:30. He had a shift after school, and Victoria was in the kitchen with the kids trying to make dinner, but she looked super stressed. The twins were complaining that they were hungry, and the daughter was at the table doing homework. Victoria saw me and said, "Since you're getting home late and didn't help with anything today, the least what you can do is finish cooking this for the kids." I was tired from work and hungry, and I told her no, that I was going to cook my own dinner. She literally threw the spoon she was using and yelled at me that I was the most selfish person she had ever met in her life, that she couldn't believe I was so indifferent to the well-being of the kids who lived in the same house as me. I yelled back that the well-being of her kids wasn't my responsibility, that I didn't ask them to come here, and that she needed to stop trying to make me her free co-parent. Then she said something that really made me angry. She said my mom would be ashamed of the person I had become, that she had taught me better than this, and that's where I also completely lost control. I told her not to dare mention my mom, that she had no right to talk about her, and that my mom would have been proud that I could take care of myself and maintain my boundaries instead of letting someone manipulate me into doing things that weren't my responsibility. Victoria turned red with rage and told me I was a spoiled and worthless kid, that I wasn't part of this family and never would be if I kept acting like this. I told her I was perfectly fine with that I didn't want to be part of her family anyway. My dad arrived in the middle of this scream fest and tried to calm us down, but I was already fed up. I went to my room and locked the door. The next morning, Victoria knocked on my door before I left for school. She told me she had thought about last night and that she was going to give me one last chance. She said that if I cooked dinner for everyone that night and started contributing more with the kids, then we could forget everything that had happened and start over. I told her no, that nothing had changed, and that I wasn't going to start doing things that weren't my responsibility just because she wanted me to. She left, without saying anything else, but I knew this wasn't over. The next few days were super weird. Victoria literally acted like I didn't exist, didn't talk to me, didn't look at me. Nothing. The kids didn't talk to me either. My dad tried to talk to me a couple times, but I basically told him there was nothing to discuss, that I was fine with the current arrangement, and that if they had a problem with that, then that was their problem, not mine. I kept working, going to school, buying my food, cooking only for myself. It was lonely. I'm not going to lie, but I also felt good maintaining my boundaries and not giving in to the pressure. Friday of that week, my dad and Victoria asked me to sit with them again. It was like 9 at night, and the kids were already asleep. Victoria started by saying this situation couldn't continue, that it was unsustainable to have someone living in the house who refused to be part of the family. My dad added that he understood. I wanted my independence, but that I needed to find a balance between being independent and being part of the family. I told them I was willing to be part of the family on reasonable terms, like eating together sometimes, watching movies, whatever, but that I wasn't going to assume parental responsibilities for kids who weren't mine. Victoria said she wasn't asking me to be a parent, just to help like any family member would help. I told her that helping is one thing, and that making them lunch every day, cooking dinners, watching them, helping with homework, all of that together was basically being a co-parent, and that I was 16 years old and hadn't signed up for that. Victoria then said something that was basically the point of no return. She said, "If you don't want to be part of this family, then maybe you should think about leaving when you turn 18. And my dad said nothing, just sat there looking at the floor. I asked him directly, "Dad, do you want me to leave when I'm 18? And he said, "Nobody's saying that. We just want you to find a way to get along better with Victoria and the kids." But I knew. Victoria had said it seriously, and that my dad basically agreed with her, even though he didn't have the guts to say it directly. I told them that was fine, that if that's what they wanted, then I could start planning my exit for when I turned 18. But that in the meantime, I was going to keep living here the way I had been living because technically it was my house too. My mom lived here, and I grew up here. Victoria got furious and said this was her house now too, and that she had as much right as me to decide how things worked. I told her perfect. So she could decide how things worked for her and her kids, and I would decide how things worked for me, and that was exactly what was happening. The conversation ended there because Victoria got up and went furiously to her room. My dad stayed a moment and told me I was making this harder than it had to be, that if I just cooperated a little, everything would be easier for everyone. I told him I wasn't making anything difficult, that I was living my life and taking care of myself, and that the only problem was that Victoria wanted to control me and make me do things I didn't want to do. He left without saying anything else. Since then, like 2 weeks ago from that, things have been in this weird stalemate. Victoria completely ignores me. The kids avoid me. My dad acts uncomfortable when we're in the same room. I continue with my routine: work, school, buy my food, cook for myself, spend time in my room. It's lonely and weird, and honestly, sometimes I wonder if I should have handled things differently. But I also know that if I had given in, then Victoria would have just asked for more and more, and I would have ended up being basically a third parent to her kids. And that's not what I want for my life right now. I'm 16 years old. I should be worried about school and my friends and maybe getting into a good college, not raising 3 kids who aren't mine. And yeah, maybe it sounds selfish, but I think it's okay to be selfish. Sometimes when the alternative is letting someone use you. Victoria basically told me I'm not part of the family, and I accepted that. I told her I was fine living here like I wasn't part of her family because I never really felt like I was part of it anyway since she arrived. Sometimes I think about my mom and what she would think about all this. Victoria said my mom would be ashamed, but honestly, I think my mom would understand. Because she was the one who unintentionally taught me to be independent when she got sick and could no longer take care of me the way she did before. I learned to cook because I had to. I learned to wash my clothes because nobody else was going to do it. I learned to take care of myself because there was no other option. And now Victoria wants me to use all those skills to take care of her kids, and I don't understand why that should be my responsibility. I guess what bothers me most is that my dad doesn't support me. I understand. He loves Victoria and wants, and his marriage to work. But it feels like he chose this new family over me. Like I'm just an inconvenience now that he has this new life with Victoria and her kids. And it hurts. I'm not gonna lie. It hurts to feel like your own father would rather you give in and be unhappy just to make things easier for his wife. But at the same time, I'm determined not to give in, because I know that if I do, then I'm going to end up being miserable and resentful. And I'd rather be alone and maintain my boundaries than be part of a family where they don't value me for who I am, but for what I can do for them. So, I guess this is my life now, living in the same house as my dad and his new family, but being basically a stranger to them, waiting to turn 18 so I can leave and start my own life for real. It's depressing when I think about it that way, but it also gives me some hope. Like, just 2 more years, and I can get out of here and never have to deal with Victoria again.